Welcome into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Today has been NBA trade deadline day. The 3 o'clock hour has come and gone, and we did actually have a very eventful trade deadline. Lots of teams getting involved in the action, and still some fallout to come with the buyout market now shaking itself out. But we're going to talk about what we do know right now, which are a lot of teams looking different today. Sap, was there one trade that happened today that really surprised you?
Not necessarily that it surprised me, but I think it's the best move made by a contender or someone who's close to a contender, and that's Miami adding Victor Oladipo. I think by adding him, they now have a third piece to go with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. I think that kind of solidifies them as the fourth best team in the East. I still don't think they're as good as Brooklyn, Philadelphia, or Milwaukee, but I think it solidifies them at number 4. And the deal that is kind of flying under the radar that scares the hell out of me, being a Laker guy, is the Clippers sending Lou Williams to Atlanta for Rajon Rondo. Now, for the regular season, Lou Williams is the better player. Rondo at times takes the regular season off. But now the Clippers have someone with championship DNA in Rajon Rondo, someone who played big in the bubble last year for the LA Lakers. You could make a case that in the finals, or at least in half of the 6 games, he was their third best player behind LeBron and Anthony Davis. I thought that Rondo was going to go to the Clippers in the offseason. Instead, he went to Atlanta. Now Atlanta moves him to the Clippers. That could be a move that, as we get into the postseason, looks better and better for the Clippers. But as far as major players, obviously, getting Oladipo is going to help Miami, and also Chicago getting Nikola Vucevic, who of all the players that moved today is the only all-star from this year. And they got him, and it seems like the Bulls seem to be in business. Someone woke the Bulls up, who've only been relevant for, 3 years since Michael Jordan retired over 20 years ago. I think that's a good move for the Bulls to get Vucevic, who is an all-star, and kind of solidifies their chances of at least making the playoffs.
Yeah, let's get into exactly how these trades happened, Sap. You mentioned the Victor Oladipo deal. That kind of came right at the buzzer of that 3 p.m. deadline. Miami received Victor Oladipo, and in return, they sent out Avery Bradley, who's a buyout candidate now, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 first-round swap rights to the Houston Rockets. Basically, Houston traded James Harden for a bag of balls, is what it's shaking out to be.
Why didn't they just keep Karis LeVert and Jared Allen? Like that would have been
not quite sure
good for, James Harden. Like, you start there with at least 2 viable NBA players. They've taken what they got for James Harden, which was the proverbial, 5 nickels, 5 dimes, and a quarter, or whatever, how it adds up, right, for one of the best players in basketball. And then they got a bunch of draft picks, which who the hell knows what those are going to be worth down the road. Maybe the Brooklyn draft choices in 5 years are going to be worth something, because by then Durant, Harden, and Kyrie, I'm sure, won't be together and will be on their last leg, and maybe Brooklyn goes back to being a bad team, and you can benefit from that. But yeah, I mean, they Houston, when they traded Harden, would have just been better off keeping Karis LeVert, who's doing a really great job in Indiana now, and Jared Allen, who's doing a nice job in Cleveland. At least you would have a couple of pieces there. Instead, right now, you've got, as you said, Avery Bradley will be involved in the buyout market, and Kelly Olynyk. So they've taken trash and turned it into more trash.
Yeah, what a horrible, horrible deal. And James Harden's been traded twice in his career, and neither one has been anything significant in return. When he got traded from the Thunder to the Rockets, I think ultimately what the Thunder ended up getting was the pick that became Steven Adams.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. And again, at that point, he wasn't James Harden as we know him now, an MVP candidate and a former MVP. When Houston traded him, they should have got a haul. I mean, you don't trade a player of that caliber who's still only 31 years old, who still has 5-6 really good years left, and get nothing in return.
No, they really screwed up massively. Massively. I mean, that's going to cost people jobs. It should cost people jobs. It's an awful return, and today it looks even worse as Oladipo was the centerpiece of that trade. He hasn't been fantastic this year, but he certainly helps Miami. He's a defensive-minded player. He is a free agent at the end of the season. I think Miami has interest in bringing him back, especially if he fits well. This is basically no-lose scenario for them. They gave up pieces that weren't particularly valuable to them. Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk are nice, but now they get like a free tryout period for Victor Oladipo. And if it works, great. They sign him in the offseason. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. You lost Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk and a swap that is probably not even going to be used anyways, because the odds of Houston having a better record than Miami in 2022 are basically zero. So that I don't know what that reverts to. Probably a second round pick if you don't end up swapping it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd say A+ from Miami, no risk, and Houston just continues to be probably the worst. And they've changed it from a team that was perennial title contenders to one of the worst run teams in the NBA in very short order.
They'll be irrelevant for a while. So we think that Oladipo is the second best player that was traded today, Vucevic being the best player.
Yeah,
we
probably
can agree on that. I mean, he's a guy who's averaging 24 and 12 this year as an all-star.
Depends on what you think of Aaron Gordon versus Victor Oladipo, I guess. But
I would
yeah,
probably take Oladipo.
You could certainly make that argument. But again, the caveat with Oladipo is he's a free agent at the end of the season. So that's why ultimately they didn't have to give up an insane amount to get him. But still, I mean, I'd say other teams should be kicking themselves that they didn't offer a comparable package. The Celtics being one of them. Miami also made another move, under the radar move that I think looks good for them. They dealt with the Kings. They traded Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. Again, two pieces they're not really using. And they get Nemanja Bjelica. I believe that's the correct pronunciation. A good stretch big that a lot of teams wanted. They got him for, again, virtually nothing. He'll be in their playoff rotation. He can knock down threes. He can play defense. Perfect for Miami. So they get two impact players and give up very little. I mean, the Bjelica will step right into the Olynyk role. He might even be a little bit better than Olynyk. So really, they got Oladipo and Bjelica and traded pieces that they don't need.
I also like what Denver and Portland did, and we talked about this on an earlier podcast, Jet, that Denver and Portland, they're just on the outside looking in of maybe being among the elite out west, and a thing that both teams need is some sort of wing scorer, defender, athlete, whatever it may be. Denver getting Aaron Gordon, I think, is a good move for them, and Portland getting Norman Powell is also a good move for them. So I think that those two teams saw needs and went after it.
Sure. So let's get into the specifics of those deals, Sap. For the Portland deal, they got Norman Powell, who we talked about yesterday, is going to be a free agent, is having the best year of his career. Averaging just under 20 points a game, provides shooting and defense and and toughness. They traded out to Toronto. They traded Rodney Hood, who's a decent 3-and-D guy, and Gary Trent Jr., who's a young player with upside, good 3-point shooter. His dad obviously played in the NBA for a while, has hit some big shots in his short NBA career. Powell is obviously the best of those three guys, depending on if you think Gary Trent Jr. can develop into a Norman Powell type. Portland certainly gets better today. For the future, hard to see. Maybe they bring back Powell next in the offseason, but they certainly feel like having him, McCollum, and Lillard gives them a lot of shooting.
Without question. Yeah, without question. And they need someone who's an athlete on the wing. He's a versatile player, so I think that's an upgrade for them for sure. Portland, again, is one of those teams that's, in the 4, 5, 6 range right now. So they're trying to improve to at least stay within that 4, 5, 6 range so they can avoid that play-in tournament or whatever you want to call it, which is very dangerous. You want to stay out of that. So good move for Portland.
Right. And you mentioned Denver was the other team in the West that's in a similar sort of spot. They made the big move to get Aaron Gordon from the Orlando Magic, who blew up their entire team today. So Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark head to Denver. In return, Denver sends the Magic Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, who's a young player with potential, and a 2025 protected first-round pick. So Orlando basically gets a veteran, a guy that they're taking a flyer on with some upside, and a pick that will probably be in the early to mid-20s. 2025 is still a ways away, so who the hell knows? But it's protected. And so, yeah, I'd say Denver, they get more athletic, they get more versatile, and they get another playmaker on a team that already has probably one of the best playmakers in all of basketball in Nikola Jokic. So certainly a good move for Denver. Gary Harris is having one of the worst years of his career. RJ Hampton's having trouble cracking the rotation because they're a good team and they don't want to play a guy who's not really ready to go yet. So I don't see any huge drawback for the Nuggets in this trade. And we talked about this the other day, Sap. Aaron Gordon's got another couple of years on his deal, so it's not like they're just renting him.
Right, and we'll see his play probably go up a step or two because he's now playing on a contending team, something he's never done. So maybe that shakes him up to get him to play better, and also playing with Nikola Jokic, he makes those around him better, right? Because he's such an elite passer, and Jamal Murray's such an outstanding player. So that's a good place for Aaron Gordon to go. And they also added JaVale McGee, who can offer, 12 to 14 minutes as a backup center, a guy with championship DNA, won one or two titles in Golden State, won one with the Lakers.
Yep.
Not that he played a huge role on those teams, but he was a contributor. He was a contributor to the Lakers last year, and Golden State before that. I remember when Cleveland played Golden State in the finals in 2018. He had some good moments there. So that's another nice.
Wasn't just an end of the bench guy. He played.
No, I still don't know why the Lakers let him go after last season. I think they would like to get him back, but they weren't able to pull that off. Now we're 12 minutes into this, Jet, and you haven't flipped out yet about your Boston Celtics.
That's because I'm doing all the other trades first.
Are you trying to delay and maybe, we run out of time and you don't have to talk about what Danny Ainge did or didn't do? Or do you want to continue on with the rest of the league and end with him so that, in case you have a stroke or suffer a heart attack, we'll have most of the podcast in? Because I sense
exactly
you
what
boiling over.
That's exactly what I want to do.
Actually. Yeah.
I want the listeners to listen to the whole thing and be excited for the end and be excited. So it's a big tease as to what my reaction is going to be.
You're going to be just like you're a movie buff too, right? Did you ever see Al Pacino in Injustice for All?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Great movie, and it just builds up, and the final scene is a great courtroom scene. That's going to be you on the podcast. You're going to be just like Pacino in that movie.
You should expect that. Expect some fireworks.
You're out of order. The whole court's out of order.
The Celtics owner likes to say fireworks. I think it's a great move for Denver getting Aaron Gordon. Does it push them past the Clippers and the Lakers is the question. Can they beat them in a 7-game series, Sap? This Denver team.
Well, I don't think so. And I like the move the Clippers made. A lot of people think that the Hawks got the better of the deal.
Rondo for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks is ultimately what it became. So
the second
Rondo
round
to the Clippers, Lou Williams to Atlanta, where he's very happy to be.
He's very happy because you can get the Magic City wings. Lou Williams lemon and pepper wings. They're named after him. So he's back home in Atlanta. Good for him. And now he doesn't have to work with, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who seem to be like impossible guys to work with. It's just everybody's leaving the Clippers because of those two players. Rondo could be the guy that goes in there and kind of straightens them out, right? Either that or that is going to be the most toxic locker room in the NBA, because I could just see Rondo and Pat Beverly having a weekly fist fight, right? I mean, that's bound to happen. Kawhi's non-communicative and Paul George is so sensitive. That's going to be like, great theater with the LA Clippers. But I do like the move they made. Sure, the Clippers and Lakers are still the two best teams in the West, even though Utah has a better record, even though Phoenix has a better record. And I'm surprised Phoenix didn't try to add a piece here at the trade deadline. Maybe they just didn't have the capital to go get someone like Aaron Gordon or Norman Powell. So they stay stagnant. The Lakers, Clippers are still the two best teams. I don't think this puts Denver or Portland past those teams. And because the Lakers didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, I think that's a really good sign for those of us, like Laker fans. I'm wearing my purple today. That LeBron James is going to be fine and Anthony Davis is going to be fine.
I never had any doubts about either of those things, Sap. As I told you earlier in the week, an ankle sprain is not a serious injury.
Not LeBron, but you have to be concerned with Anthony Davis. He has a history of injuries. But I think they're just milking it as long as they can so that there's more in the tank for the postseason. You said that a month ago when he went out. You said let him sit until the last 5 to 10 games and then get him ready for the postseason.
Why not?
He's expected to be back in a couple weeks. Well, now without LeBron, you don't want to fall too far back. I don't want to see the Lakers in the 7 or 8 slot because I learned today that 7, 8, 9, 10 is even more crazy than I thought. The way it works is 9 and 10 have a 1-game playoff. The winner plays the loser of 7, 8. So 7, 8 play 1 game. The winner of that game advances to the postseason. The loser of that game plays the winner of 9 and 10 for the other playoff spot. That's like really crazy, and that's playing with fire. You want to avoid that at all costs because, if you're the 9th seed, you lose 1 game, you're out. That's not a good position to be in. So I think that's a sign that LeBron and Anthony Davis are going to be just fine. But again, Portland and Denver, they're right there, but there really weren't enough high-level players to put them over the top, right?
Right. I look at them. I look at those as moves to beat Utah and Phoenix and get out of the first round, as opposed to moves to beat LA and LA. I think that certainly Utah and Phoenix can go down to either Philly or Denver, and I think they'd be competitive series. But I look at those moves more as they give them a better chance of beating one of those teams. Then it'll be tough to out the Clippers or the Lakers, especially the Lakers, because they have LeBron and so much experience now. So I think they both improved themselves, but it's hard to vault yourself ahead of the top contenders without adding a star player. Mm-hmm. And Aaron Gordon's a very good player. Norman Powell's a very good player. Neither of them is a star player. Neither of them is an all-star player. So good moves, probably not enough to get them to where they ultimately would want to be, which is in the NBA Finals. So let's look at some of the other deals before I explode and go in on the Celtics sap. Chicago, you mentioned at the top of the show, they woke up today and said, let's party like it's 1996. They got Nikola Vucevic from the Orlando Magic and Al-Farouq Aminu. In exchange, they sent Wendell Carter Jr., I believe he was a top 6 pick a couple of years ago. Otto Porter Jr., a buyout candidate, and also a former top 3 pick. A 2021 first-round pick and a 2023 first-round pick to Orlando. So the Magic get a guy that they can hope to project to be maybe their center of the future, Wendell Carter Jr. Mm-hmm. He's been a little bit up and down in the NBA. I know a lot of people are high on him coming out of Duke. Otto Porter, again, was probably going to be bought out. And they get 2 picks from a team that historically has given up good picks. So I think Orlando got pretty good value for Vucevic. They were clearly in tank mode. And Chicago traded pieces that I don't think were super important to what they were trying to do this year and got an all-star. And now they have 2 all-stars, which puts them in rare company in the Eastern Conference. Not a lot of teams have those 2 all-stars. So the Bulls now, Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, that's what they're building their team around.
So now there's 2 teams in the Eastern Conference with 2 all-stars, which have a losing record, the Bulls and the Celtics. I don't want to rub that in at all. But no, Vucevic is the best player that was traded today, without question, followed by Oladipo, followed by Gordon, followed by Powell. I think if you're going to rank the 4 guys that were traded today, it's probably in that order. I still think that Rondo could have a huge impact in the postseason.
You like Rondo? We're starting to get a clear picture here that you really like Rondo.
I am scared of Rondo, not quite as
playoff Rondo
as I was frightened of Brady in the NFC Championship game. That scared the hell out of me. I'm like, of all the teams that the Packers are hosting the NFC Championship game, it's Tom Brady. Oh, my God, couldn't he have just stayed in the AFC for one more year so my guy Aaron Rodgers could win another Super Bowl? Rondo is the kind of guy that if it's the Western Conference Finals or even the semis against the Lakers, he's not going to shrink in the moment, right? We know that. Paul George is likely to shrink in a big moment. Rondo's not going to. May not hit the shot. He'll take it, and he'll be in your face about it. So I think that's a move way under the radar that I think is pretty interesting. But there were some other moves, too, that the contenders
You like this from Chicago?
Maybe. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They got the best player. So now they have Vucevic, and you get Zach LaVine, 2 all-stars. So now they can kind of build around those guys. I'm a big, Markkanen fan. He hasn't really developed the way I thought he was going to. But maybe now that there's less responsibility for him, he'll blossom somewhat.
Here's the question then, Sap. Are they better now than the Pacers?
Well, I'm high on the Pacers because the Pacers, to me, have 4 players that are
who did nothing today, by the way.
Who did nothing today, which I thought they were going to move on from Malcolm Brogdon, which turns out I think that's a good move, keeping him. He's an outstanding player. There's not all the guys in the league that are 50, 40, 90 shooters. Karis LeVert's playing really well in Indiana. You got Sabonis and you got Turner. So you've got, 4 legitimate players. I'd say that those 2 teams are probably pretty equal. I'd still probably give the edge to Indiana. Chicago just seems to always screw things up. Like nothing ever works for them. It really hasn't since 1998. They did have that nice run with Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah. But I still think Indiana's better than Chicago. But they're all kind of in that.
Right, I wanted to go one for one, Seth.
Right?
So would you say now Chicago adding Vucevic, would you put them ahead of, you already are not saying Indiana. What about Atlanta?
Atlanta kept John Collins.
They did.
So they have two guys. Now, Collins is not an all-star, but he's kind of like a borderline all-star type player. And they're doing
this
some
move
really
only
nice
works
things
if
in
they
Atlanta.
can pass some teams in the standings.
Right.
I'm looking at the teams right ahead of them. It's Indiana, Boston, Atlanta, New York, and then Miami and Charlotte. So take Miami out of it because they're clearly better. But
Miami's going to be the 4 seed.
I'd say between Indy, Boston, Atlanta, New York, Charlotte, are they better than any of those teams now? Did they vault themselves ahead of them with getting Vucevic?
I still don't think so, only because here's the thing. The highlight of the trade deadline are 3 players from Orlando, right?
Yeah.
Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and the third player we won't mention yet. If those guys were all so good, how come Orlando sucks? Like, if those 3 guys were really that good.
They made the playoffs last year.
They did, yeah. They win 5 games in the first round. Congratulations. They've gone to the playoffs, I think, twice in the last 7 years. So if those guys are that good, it didn't translate to the court.
They're better as individuals than as a team. That's
right.
It's
it's almost like you're trading off parts, right? These parts mean more solo than together. So I can get that. But Jet, here's the thing: Charlotte right now is the 4 seed in the East, 22 and 21. Yep. Indiana's the 9 seed, 20 and 23. So between 4 and 9, that's 6 teams. 2 games separate those 6 teams. They're all kind of bunched together. We do expect Miami to kind of solidify the 4 slot. So then we're looking at, 5 through 9 being within 2 games of each other. I like Vucevic. I like Zach LaVine. Look, if Vucevic plays at the level he's played so far this year, which is the best year of his career, they certainly are in play there for, say, the 5-6 seed with the likes of the Celtics and Atlanta and Indiana and, Charlotte still playing pretty good ball, though losing LaMelo Ball really hurts them. If they had LaMelo Ball, I think they'd be looking at, being a solid 5-6 seed. So, but Chicago at least made a move, right? If you're a Chicago Bulls fan today, you're probably happy because you got the best player that was available on the trade market. So it's a step in the right direction for the Bulls.
Yeah.
Paint it that way.
I don't think they had the 2 first-round picks hurt for a team that I'm sure there's more protections on it than I'm seeing.
Sure.
But it hurts for a team that's constantly drafting in the lottery. But you would think that this should elevate you, 1, out of the lottery. And 2, at some point, it's, what, or get off the pot. Stop hoarding first-round picks and whiffing on guys and make the move. If you can get the guy who's already established, get the guy who's already established. Mm-hmm. So I think that they did well to get him. I think it will put them in the playoffs because right now they're in that play-in spot. They're 10 in the East. If I had to guess of the teams that are in right now, it looks like I would guess Charlotte and the Knicks probably fall out of the teams that are in that could fall out. Just because of the injury to LaMelo Ball. And I don't know, the Knicks have been, sort of playing above themselves for the entire season.
But the Knicks could be on the buyout market for Andre Drummond. That's one of the rumors out there that the 2 places.
Which, by the way, I don't
go.
understand why he would go there.
Maybe he's not interested in winning a ring. Maybe he's interested in playing 25, 30 minutes a night, building up his value to get another contract. Or the Knicks have $50 million in cap room in the offseason, and maybe they sign him to a contract, which I think might be a mistake. I don't think he really fits into today's NBA, although anybody that can average 18 and 14, you got to find a home from somewhere. But the rumor is the Knicks or the Lakers are the 2 leaders to get Drummond once he's part of the buyout market. I think the Lakers will end up with him if he's serious about winning a championship, and he'd be a nice piece for them. But, the East right now, because now you look at Toronto, which sold off some pieces but didn't trade Kyle Lowry. I don't think they're going to be able to jump into the playoff fray. I mean, the message is we're rebuilding, and then you still hold on to your best player who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Surprised me. That surprised me. I thought that, they'd be able to work out a deal with Philadelphia. But then when I saw Philadelphia get George Hill, Philadelphia was just trying to add a piece just in case they weren't able to get Kyle Lowry. They didn't get Kyle Lowry, so now George Hill gives them some depth at the guard position. He's a fine player. Just don't expect him to hit 2 free throws with 4 seconds left in game 1 of the finals to win it. He'll hit one and miss the second one. Still hold that against him.
That's
from the
the
2018 finals. Yes. Put him to the line if you want to
I
solidify
got
a
news
win
for you,
because he'll
Sap.
miss one.
Wouldn't have made a lick of difference. They were going down to that Warriors team.
No. They win that first game. I think they put the Warriors on their heels.
No.
LeBron had 51 in game one. He was
Good
playing
for
at
him.
another level, and I think that could have been an upset. I smelled an upset, Jet.
I think
smelled an
that
upset.
the Lowry thing is interesting because there were three teams that were in on him, right? The Lakers, supposedly, the Heat, and the Sixers. I respect the hell out of Masai Ujiri to say he's the guy at the car dealership who he's not getting the offer he wants and says, I'm leaving the dealership.
Yep.
He's not bluffing. I think that gives him cachet going forward. Whether he's remains GM of Toronto or another team, preferably the Celtics, hires him. I think teams know
he's president. He's president of the Raptors.
If I'm dealing with this guy, he's not bluffing. He will pull out of the deal unless I stop offering him junk. Like the Lakers, I think we're offering spare parts, and it seems
that's all they have. Yeah,
it seems like that's exactly what the Heat and the Heat probably offered a similar package for Lowry as they offered for Oladipo. I'm sure they would have preferred Lowry, but the package for Oladipo sucked, and the Rockets are dumb enough to take it. But the Raptors, why give away Lowry if you don't have? I mean, if you're not going to get anything that's really going to help you in the future, why just give him away?
And you do have the potential for a sign and trade in the offseason, right?
Yeah, sure. And also, you want to help out the Heat? You want to help out the Sixers? These teams in your conference?
That was our concern, right? When we talked the other day about that, are you just going to give an all-star caliber point guard with championship DNA to two teams that are in your conference? You bolster their chances to win. So Masai Ujiri to me is the best executive in all of sports. But forget him ever coming to Boston. I think he signed a long-term deal for about $15 million a year with Toronto. He's president of basketball operations. That means nothing. Okay.
No, it means nothing.
Your guy, I think, has a job for life, so he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we can talk about the Celtics now because we've covered.
You keep pushing it off, Jet. You keep kicking the.
We've covered everything else.
There's one other move. Can I mention one other move that I
Dallas getting JJ Redick, was that very exciting to you?
And
Nico Melli.
Well, they need some outside shooters. Redick can still provide that.
Nico Melli, Sap. He's a Paisan.
Nico Melli. Yes, that's true. We need as many Italians in there as we can. That's why I root for the Atlanta Hawks with Danilo Gallinari. But I think New Orleans getting J.J. Redick, just a nice little piece. And they held on to Lonzo Ball. Dallas gets him. Yeah, New Orleans trades him to Dallas. I think it's a good move. They need some outside shooters because, they lost Seth Curry from last year's team, who was really, really good. So maybe Redick can finally fill that role for Dallas. And then New Orleans, of course, held on to Lonzo Ball, and now they're talking about an extension, which I think is a good move because I think the Ball, Zion Williamson, and Brandon Ingram trio, I wouldn't really call it a big three. It's more of a big two with Lonzo Ball, but I think that's a pretty good group to start off in New Orleans. But I think you're ready to erupt like Mount Vesuvius or Mount Etna.
Yeah,
Speaking of Italians.
Just quickly on the Redick thing, Sap, it seems like a nothing move to me. I don't think that Redick has really much left in the tank at all, and it's not going to make a difference for Dallas one way or the other this year. As far as Lonzo Ball goes, I do like the fit in New Orleans, but his dad says he's unhappy there, so I think he's going to end up going to the Knicks actually this offseason. I could see that happening.
Yeah, the Knicks need, and he does have star power because of his dad. He's flashy. His brother is awesome. So. Yeah, I mean, the Knicks have done a great job this year. I think Tom Thibodeau's right up there with Monty Williams in Phoenix for Coach of the Year. I really do. They've both done a great job. But, yeah, I could see that happening. And at that point, New Orleans wouldn't get nothing in return unless it's a sign and trade, which is an option in the offseason. So,
yeah, which the Celtics love to do for no
Yeah, they love that.
All right, so here's what the Celtics did at the deadline, Sap.
I'm going to go make a cup of coffee now, Jet, and I'm going to, brush my teeth and clean my toilet bowl as you go on. So go ahead.
That's fine. They started off early. They traded for Evan Fournier, 2 second-round picks to Orlando. Evan Fournier makes $17 million a year. This is the last year of his contract, but you have to eat. You can't just send players and eat the money. Celtics have to dip into that mythical traded player exemption they got from Gordon Hayward that was going to save the franchise. So far, it has done nothing to save the franchise, and now it's bringing in a 2-month rental of Evan Fournier. They also got Mo Wagner. It's not
Wagner.
W. You pronounce it with a V. It's spelled
like
Wagner, but you pronounce it like Wagner.
Well, the
They traded
composer,
Daniel
Richard
Tice
Wagner.
to Chicago to get the services of Mr. Wagner. That's it. That's what the Celtics did today. Evan Fournier and Mo Wagner. Out goes Daniel Tice and 2 second-round picks. Blown up goes the traded player exception. You get a guy in Evan Fournier who can score, can't play any defense. Do you know how many points the Celtics gave up in the first half to the Milwaukee Bucks last night, Sap?
70.
70 points. 70 points in the first half to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Well, they played better in the second half. They only gave up 51 in the second half.
Does Evan Fournier help with them not giving up 70 points and a half? No, he does not. Not at all. Mo Wagner in, Daniel Tice out. Trading Tice, that's fine. Getting Mo Wagner here? Why? What's the purpose of that? You're getting a worse version of Tice just to save a little bit of money, get under the cap. Here's the problem, Sap. This team is directionless. Absolutely lost at sea, directionless. They have no plan. I've said this before. Once the Kyrie Irving thing happened and he left and you couldn't get Anthony Davis here, that was the plan. It got blown up. Ainge had no plan B. He still has no plan B. The only thing the Celtics are hoping for is that Tatum and Brown keep getting better to the point where they both become top 5 players in the league, and suddenly the Celtics become the best team in the league because they have 2 top 5 players.
It's not going to happen.
No, but that's their whole philosophy now is a wing and a prayer, hoping that their 2 young guys develop into 2 of the best players in the league. That's not a way to build a team. Danny Ainge has had opportunities to, in the past, make supplemental moves like this Evan Fournier trade and vault the Celtics into contention. This wasn't the year to make a supplemental move. This was the year to make a big move. The Celtics can't be the mid-2000s Atlanta Hawks, adrift at sea, competing for the 7, 8, 6, 5 seed. They're in NBA no man's land. They have no future picks from other teams that are going to be bad. They only have their own. They have 2 guys who are all-stars, but not superstars. And they have a GM who's doing nothing about it and has absolutely no plan. And this grand idea of this traded player exemption being a mechanism to get in a star player, you're eating over half of it to bring in a guy who's going to be here for 2 months and then be a free agent. You're not getting any further in the NBA playoffs this year because you added Evan Fournier. You're still going to lose in the first round. So why do it? I just don't understand anything they're doing right now. I don't understand anything Danny Ainge is doing. He not only seems asleep at the wheel, he seems completely derelict of his duty. And I think that the Celtics, if the ownership actually gives 2 shits about winning, needs to clean freaking house. New coach, new front office. I don't want to see Mike Zarin in there. He's part of this front office. New mindset, some sort of strategy to get the team back into contention, Sep. Not this. They're treading water at the bottom of the playoff race.
Why did he make this move when he's not made a trade deadline move since 2015, when he had teams that actually went to the Eastern Conference Finals, right, in 17, 18, in 20. He didn't make a move at the trade deadline last year. He didn't make it in 2018 or in 2017 when he had better teams than this team. He never made a move to try to put them over the top. If they had made a trade deadline move last year, there's a chance they could have beat the Miami Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think 100%. They would have beaten. I don't think they would have beat the Lakers in the finals. But you know what? Getting to the finals is better than getting to the conference finals. I truly believe that. So why now? I think there's a few reasons why now. First of all, I think it came to his attention that he hasn't made a move at the trade deadline since 2015 when he was being interviewed by Brian Robb of Mass Live, and he was kind of shocked at the question. So maybe a bell went off in his head, said, well, I'm going to have to make a move at the trade deadline. Did ownership put some pressure on Danny Ainge and say, we've got to do something? We got to show our 2 young stars, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that we're trying to get better here, that they need some help, and we're going to provide some help. And Fournier is not a star, but he is a nearly 20-point-per-game scorer who's shooting close to 40% from 3. The other thing is, if you've seen the ratings on Celtics games, they're down bad. 33% from last year. I don't think Evan Fournier is going to move the needle, but if they start to play a little bit better, maybe that helps. Maybe their business partners put some pressure on them to say, this is what we have. We've got two young stars, as you said perfectly, Jet, stars, not superstars. One who oftentimes doesn't seem engaged in Jason Tatum. His mind seems to be elsewhere from time to time. And this is what you bring in as Evan Fournier. But I guess it's better than nothing. But my question is, why didn't he do this in the years leading up to this to maybe put a team that got to the conference finals over the top even one of those years?
I don't think he's arrogant. Because he's arrogant, Sap.
He has to win the trade 99-1. He can't just go ahead and make a trade to make his team better because, God forbid, he makes the other team better as well.
It's not just that.
He can't deal with that.
It's the unwillingness to part with picks because he thinks he's going to nail every single one of them. Because that's how he's viewed these picks is, I'm so smart. I am going to nail all these picks. Everybody is going to look like a freaking idiot. I'm going to build a super team through the draft. And he's botched so many of them. The value of picks is he just has never understood the value of picks. He's hoarding them like they're gold when they're really supplemental pieces to get a trade done. He's nixed deals because he had to add in some extra picks that ended up being players the Celtics don't even use or are quickly out of the league. It's so frustrating to me that ownership continues to only give this guy support, and Celtics fans largely say, well, look at that Brooklyn trade and look at that KG trade. When, listen, the Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis plan was a good plan. It almost worked. You couldn't really account for Kyrie being such a flake, I guess, at the end of the day. He blew it up. And that's part of the reason why he's my least favorite basketball player in the NBA, because he really damaged the Celtics. But you can't only have one plan. You need to have some sort of fallback option. And Danny Ainge has now proven to me, without a shadow of a doubt, that once that got imploded, he had no idea how to proceed from there. No idea. And whether it be shaking it up and trading, Brown or Tatum, or even making supplemental moves in the past few years, he hasn't been willing to admit any mistakes that he's made, and he's made a lot of them. And Celtics fans need to hold him more accountable. And more importantly than that, Wyc Grousbeck and the rest of the owners of the Celtics need to hold him far more accountable. The Celtics shouldn't be a team that are a middling Eastern Conference team over and over again. And that's exactly where they are right now. Because even if Brown and Tatum continue to take a leap, they're not going to be better than James Harden and Kevin Durant, and then throw Kyrie Irving into the mix. And neither one of them is going to be as good as Giannis. I think they're both excellent young players, but you're now blocked by teams in the East unless you do something. And I don't see that there's any urgency or ideas as to what to do here.
Jet, how many times have I told you this? We talked about it seemed like hundreds of times when we were working together at the Herald. Jason Tatum reminds me of Paul George. Jaylen Brown reminds me, at his best, of Jimmy Butler. Can Paul George and Jimmy Butler on their own win an NBA championship? No. So I think that's the ceiling for those two players. Those guys are multiple-time All-Stars. Those are really, really good players, but they're not at the level of LeBron and Durant and Harden and Steph Curry and Kawhi Leonard. Those are your super-duper stars. But Celtics fans
have deluded themselves into thinking that, and Danny Ainge has fed that line to the media and to probably to ownership too. People are buying it up. I mean, at this point, he's become a snake oil salesman, Sap. I mean, really, he's become an absolute snake oil salesman where he's selling fans and the ownership on this vision that he has of Tatum and Brown ascending to being two of the best players in the league. And they're going to be perennial all-stars, but that doesn't mean that you're competing for a championship. And teams like the Nets have passed you by. The Lakers have tied you in championships, very likely could pass you this year. That's something that ownership promised would never happen. And they're not doing anything to say, hey, this isn't a direction we like to be going in. The Celtics are trending in a downward direction right now, Sap. The top of the East has gotten better, and the Celtics are now blocked from trying to go to where they want to be, which is the NBA championship, unless they make some drastic moves. And I'm not just talking drastic roster moves. I'm talking drastic shakeup of the entire organization. This coach isn't working anymore. The vision of the GM has come and gone. He's other teams don't want to deal with him. He's not somebody that is willing to take big swings anymore. And they need somebody who's in and who's hungry and who has a plan. There's no plan. And this trade deadline was a perfect example of how there's absolutely no plan. They made a move today, Sap, just to make a move. And that's no way to run a team. No way to run a team.
No, because now people will tune in for the next few games. Who is this guy, Evan Fournier? And I'm sure Ainge is praying to death that the guy scores 25, 30 points in his first game and they pull an upset at Milwaukee and he can take a sigh of relief and maybe the ratings go up a little bit. But let's talk about the mismanagement of this roster. And we've talked about this oftentimes, Jet. Just look at Daniel Tice, okay? 3 years ago, the 2018-2019 season, that was Kyrie's last season here. Daniel Tice was the 10th player on that team, right? They had 9 players better than Daniel Tice. He averaged 12, 13 minutes a game. He was a nice 10th guy, right?
Right.
Now, this year, he's averaging close to 24 minutes, takes the last shot, a potential game-winning shot against the Milwaukee Bucks last night. I don't even know what he's doing on the floor in that situation. He misses a pretty wide-open three. He's averaging 24 minutes a night. So from 3 years ago, he was averaging 12 minutes. Now he's averaging 24. That shows you how bereft of talent this roster is right now. You know, gone Kyrie Irving, gone Gordon Hayward, gone Al Horford, Marcus Morris, Terry Rozier, you know, players that were really, really good. And you got nothing back in return. You got a trade exception for Gordon Hayward, and you used it on Evan Fournier. Now, unless they're going to sign Fournier in the offseason, long term, you know, you gave up whatever you gave up today, which is 2 second-round picks, which means nothing. But is Fournier going to move the needle? Shouldn't Fournier be like your 5th or 6th best player on a championship team, not your 3rd best player? And then the free agent signing of Kemba Walker has been a disaster because, quite frankly, he's not healthy. Now, you didn't know that when you signed him, although, you know, if you look at actuaries, 5'11" point guards, once they reach around 30, generally aren't very good after that. So
no, it was a desperation signing. They lost Kyrie, and there was a reactionary.
Right. Instead of just saying, we lost Kyrie, let's, you know, take a breath here. It's like, okay, we got a nicer guy version of Kyrie, which is all well and good, except that in terms of talent, they're not even close. I mean, Kyrie Irving is a future Hall of Famer. He's, you know, one of the 5 most unstoppable guys in the NBA when he's attending the game and got his head into it. Kemba Walker's a really nice player, you know, multiple-time All-Star, but he's not Kyrie Irving. So the roster mismanagement, to me, is the biggest issue with this team. And you're right. Overrating Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is at the crux of this because you're putting a lot of pressure on 2 young kids, and I think they're kind of falling under the weight of that pressure. Last year, at least you had Gordon Hayward to take a little pressure off them, right? Kemba was healthy last year. The year before that, you had Horford here, who's a steadying influence. Morris is a nice piece to have, and Kyrie's the guy who should have been the lead guy here. I think you're right. Once Kyrie left, there was no plan B. There really wasn't, and they're paying for it right now.
But that's a terrible way to be a GM of a team. You need to have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z. You need to. And Ainge only had a plan A, and it fell apart, and the Celtics are paying for it right now. And he should pay for it with his job. He's had a great job. He's had a nice run, won a title. He's made a lot of money. It's over. It's done. He's steering the team into the iceberg right now, Sap. That's what's happening. You can't. This is such a perfect example of where they are. You made a move today just to make a move. That's something that shitty franchises do. To say, hey, we did something. We made a move today. It's a pathetic facade of trying to say we're a team that's attempting to win a championship. And if you have a shred of intelligence as a fan, you should see right through it.
The Chicago Bulls have been irrelevant since 1998. Again, outside of about a 3-year stretch with Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah and Jimmy Butler came later on. They made, I think, a really good move today by getting the best player that was available in the trade market in Nikola Vucevic. That's a good move. Other teams made somewhat impact moves. Miami, who right now is kind of in the same spot with you in the middle of the Eastern Conference playoff standings, went out and got the second best player in Victor Oladipo. And then Denver and Portland, teams that are in much better shape than you are right now, actually got nice pieces in Norman Powell and Aaron Gordon. So those teams stepped up big time. And the Celtics got Evan Fournier, who, again, if he's your fifth or sixth or seventh best player, now you're okay. They're going to be relying on him mightily to take some pressure off of Tatum and Brown.
It's not about Fournier, the player, too, because he's a fine player. Like you said, he's averaging almost 20 points a game. He's a good shooter. He can do stuff. It's about the lie that was fed to the fans in the media about this traded player exemption being a mechanism to get another star player in here. And that, oh, no, it's better that we didn't trade Gordon Hayward to Indiana for Miles Turner and Doug McDermott because this trade exemption's better. We prefer to have this, because it will get us somebody who's better than those guys. That was a lie at the time, and it's proven now to 100% have been a lie, because Evan Fournier is not better than Miles Turner and Doug McDermott. He's better than Doug McDermott. He's not better than Miles Turner, and he's certainly not better than adding both of those guys to the team. So ultimately, you lost Gordon Hayward, and you're getting 2 months of Evan Fournier. That's the equation, and Celtics fans need to wake up to the fact that that's Danny Ainge's fault, and he's done a bad job here. He hasn't done an okay job. He's done a bad job. He's let this roster get really bad. He's let the coach wear out his welcome here, and he's steering this team towards the last place you want to be in the NBA, which is not bad enough to get a top pick, not nearly good enough to compete. It's the worst place you can possibly be. I need to have Danny Ainge and Wyc Grousbeck on an interview with Truth Serum saying, what is the goal? Is the goal to win a championship, or is the goal to look like you're trying to win for a championship? Because those are not the same thing. Trying to compete for a championship is different than pretending you're competing for a championship right now. The Celtics are pretending to compete for a championship right now by trying to sell you a spoonful of lies. The TPE is going to get us a star player. Tatum and Brown are going to be top 5 players in the league. It's just it's stuff that is, and the stuff that's gone on at the past couple trade deadlines. We were really close to getting Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. We were really close to getting Paul George. It was just costing too much. The Celtics front office lies to the fans all the time. The owner goes ahead with it. It's a problem from the top down. This team is in terrible shape right now. It's so weird to say that of a team that has 2 young all-star players. They're in bad shape. They need to do something desperately now to fix it. They can't rely on whatever Danny Ainge is doing. He's treading water and collecting paychecks.
Well, nothing's going to happen until the offseason, and I doubt Danny Ainge gets let go by the Celtics. He's been here 18 years. I think he has a job for life. It's like a Supreme Court justice or a U.S. senator. I think that's the case, and I think Brad Stevens is right with him. Wyc Grousbeck is incredibly comfortable with Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, and they had somewhat of a nice run, but you can't sell to the fans. We've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals 3 of the last 4 years. This is a franchise with 17 championships. You can't sell that to the fans. Meanwhile, look what the Patriots have done, right? They had a down season last year, actually more than a down season, because they went 7-9, and the quarterback that you let walk went to Tampa and won a Super Bowl. 2020 into 2021 was a kick in the nuts for the New England Patriots. What does Bill Belichick do in the offseason? Spends money, brings in a lot of talent. The owner's signing checks to bring in these talented players. Now they got to fix the quarterback situation. But if you're a Patriots fan, you go, okay, Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, they're invested here. They're going to try to build a winner again. Whereas with the Celtics, it's like la-di-da, la-di-da. If we win one round of the playoffs, that's an accomplishment. That's not good enough for the Celtics. This is supposed to be a high-level franchise.
Yeah, it's not. And they need to pick a direction now. They need to pick a direction of, are we going to compete for a championship, or are we going to bottom out? Because this is terrible. This is not where you want to be. So whether they want to completely start from scratch, bring in a new GM, trade the Jays, get a bunch of picks, it sounds crazy to say, but it's better than this. Or if they want to bundle all their picks, add Smart, the young guys, try to get another all-star and see if you can have 3 all-stars, because Kemba Walker's not an all-star anymore.
No. Nope.
And see if you can roll from there. But this treading water is the worst thing they can do. And this sort of deadline, to me, it's almost worse than doing nothing. Because you've now torpedoed that TPE, which maybe you weren't going to end up using it anyways, but to at least keep some hope alive in the offseason that you'd be able to swing something interesting. Now they have 11 of it left. They've eaten 17 of it on a guy that I don't think they're going to resign. So he's here for 2 months, and I'm sure he'll play well here. But the Celtics are losing in the first round. Make no doubt about it. They're losing in the first round, regardless of who they play. And Brad Stevens, I believe, will be fired right after that. And Danny Ainge should be fired right after that, too. I don't think Ainge is going to get fired for the reasons you said. The owners are too close with him. But if he does keep his job this offseason, I think you should start hearing some Dolan-esque sell the team chants in the Garden, because this is outrageous that they've gotten to this point. It's outrageous that Ainge has let it get to this.
Keep an eye on the Indiana Hoosiers coaching position because they still haven't filled it yet.
No.
And we've been talking about Brad Stevens potentially going to Indiana if he's let go by the Celtics. Some think if he's let go by the Celtics, he'll continue to coach in the NBA. I think Indiana Hoosiers is a perfect spot for him. They still haven't filled that spot. So maybe they're just going to wait till the end of the NBA season. And if Stevens is gone, they pounce on him and they've got their coach of the future. I think you wait several months to get that guy rather than just fill that slot with just another coach. We both agree Stevens is a great college coach. At times, he appeared to be a great NBA coach, but right now, he's lost the team. He's lost the locker room, and they're a below 500 team right now. That's all they are.
Here's another team to keep a look at on Sap, Duke. Mike Krzyzewski is older now. He just had a really hard season with the COVID stuff. I don't know how much longer he's going to want to do this. They would love to hire Brad Stevens at Duke, too.
Yeah, he'd be perfect there. Yeah,
pay huge money because they're a private school, so they could pay him whatever the hell they wanted.
Yeah, no, that's a great spot for him as well. Unless they want to keep it in house and maybe they come up to Harvard and ask to see if Tommy Amaker would be interested. But Tommy Amaker loves coaching Harvard. His wife's got a really great job in the Boston market. He loves that job. It affords him to do other things besides have to worry about coaching 24/7. So. I think that would be an option, but yeah, that could potentially be, or maybe, throw a name out there. Another player, another coach who's an outstanding coach is actually another coach that I should have mentioned for potential coach of the year. Quinn Snyder played at Duke, but I think Quinn Snyder's really established himself as a top tier NBA coach, and Utah's, probably one really good player away from being a title team. Even though they have the best record in the league right now. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Celtics. Again, Ainge has been here 18 years, only 3 years longer than Bill Belichick. He has one title, and for some reason, he gets treated with kid gloves more so than Belichick. Belichick had one bad year, and I think he's righted the ship, and he doesn't get as much rope as Danny Ainge gets. Danny Ainge, whether it's the Celtic media, the fans, whatever the case may be, they love the guy. And he's a likable guy. He wasn't a likable guy as a player if you were playing against him. But, on your team, he was a likable guy. He's good with the media. I also want to bring this up, Jet, and I know we're kind of pressed for time, but Danny Ainge suffered his second heart attack 2 years ago when the Celtics were playing Milwaukee in the postseason. He appears to me have lost some steam, which can be the case with someone who's 61, 62 years old. I'm sure he's on a lot of medication. I'll be honest with you. I suffered a medical condition a year and a half ago. I'm on a lot of medication, probably some of the same medication that Danny Ainge is on. It takes a lot out of you. He just may not be up for this job anymore.
I don't think he works the phones like he used to. I think there's been a lot of deals that have fallen by the wayside that you go, man, why did the Celtics make that deal? Because I don't think they're as active anymore.
What you do
because he knows he has a job. I mean, that's sort of stuff. When your job's not threatened, it takes a little bit of the effort out of it, right? Why are you busting your ass if you know nothing's going to happen to you if something goes wrong? And something's gone very wrong here. Fans should be pissed off.
Unless they make him, keep him as president of basketball operations and then hire a general manager who does the day-to-day stuff. And I agree with you. I don't want Michael Zarens either because he's been here for as long as Ainge pretty much. So let's move outside the family and bring someone in to try to, right the ship without question.
Yeah, so I'd say bad trade deadline for the Celtics. Just because it's indicative of the direction they're heading, which is that treading water in no man's land. The big winner, I agree with you, Miami. I think they hit a home run because they gave up nothing. Chicago, big winner. Denver, big winner. Portland did well for themselves. I don't think as well as those other teams. And Oklahoma City, I think, got some more picks too. So I believe I saw in the next 7 years, Sap, 17 first-round picks. And 17 second rounds. Yeah.
They have 34 picks over the next 7 years. That's great if you're a football team. That's great.
Well,
in
you
the
can't
NFL.
field a roster with that many players, so they're
No.
gonna have to figure something out.
I told you, Orlando, Houston, and Oklahoma City
New Orleans
over
too.
the next 7 years, and New Orleans are going to own the draft. There's going to be like 4 teams drafting in the first round. And Danny
Sam
Ainge is going to
Presti,
get
by the way, is
very
from
jealous.
here. God, would I love Sam Presti to be the GM of the Celtics. Holy moly. I would love him to be the GM of the Celtics.
Look at the draft record he has, because Harden was the 4th pick overall when he came out of Arizona State. Third or fourth. I think Westbrook was 5th. Was Westbrook the 5th overall
and
pick?
They thought it was a reach at the time. Westbrook.
They nailed both of those guys. Serge Ibaka was a late first-round pick. Steven Adams was mid to late first-round pick. He just constantly nails draft picks where Ainge hasn't done anywhere near that. So you'll be calm by tomorrow, I'm sure. Well, no, I don't think you will be. You'll still be even more upset.
This is ridiculous. I mean, I'm at my wit's end with this, and I'm just the Celtics media spin. Well, just 2 second-round picks for it's not about what they gave up for Evan Fournier. He scores 20 points a game. It's not about Evan Fournier. It's about the actual direction of the team. That there's no plan.
Why didn't you go get a player of this caliber last year, when you may have been the best team in the Eastern Conference? Right?
Arrogance.
It may have put you over the top. You're doing it now. So what's this get you to the 5th seed, maybe? And that means you get bounced in the first round by Miami, or if you pull an upset somehow, get totally embarrassed by Brooklyn. So, I mean, congratulations.
Let me ask you this, Sap. Why is Romeo Langford or Aaron Nesmith on this team? What service do they provide? Don't they provide a lot more to another team? You couldn't have offered a first-round pick and both of those guys for Harrison Barnes and actually made your team better? You don't think the Kings would have said yes to that? I do.
I've seen more of Romeo Montague than Romeo Langford, and I've seen more of Michael Nesmith from the Monkees compared to Aaron Nesmith of the Celtics over the last year or two.
He's done a terrible job. Job. Derelict of his duty. He should be fired. And I'd love to work for the Celtics someday. I've come to the realization there's no way that they'll hire me because I've said way too many mean things about their front office and ownership. But you know what? I'm at least glad that I am not one of the Celtics media lackeys who circles the wagons every single time they do something and says how great they do it. Because people need a dose of reality and a dose of honesty. And the reality is the team stinks, but they're not that bad to the point where they're going to be getting a really transformational player in the draft.
No.
So it's bad. Danny Ainge should lose his job. Brad Stevens should lose his job. The roster should look completely different next year. That's what should happen. As you like to say, what is and what should be aren't the same thing.
Before we wrap it up, I just want to let people know about a Twitter poll that I have out there. I love Twitter polls at John Sap 25.
Go ahead. I need to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah, smoke a cigarette after sex. The Twitter poll at John Sap 25 is, going forward, which team has a better duo? The Celtics with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, or the Pelicans with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram? At John Sap 25. Let us know, and we're going to discuss that in the next podcast, and I'm sure that may infuriate you even more.
Yeah, it will. It will definitely infuriate me more, but go vote in the poll. I'm sure that the Celtics will end up winning that poll because, the audience you have here, but it is a good discussion. I'm excited to get into it. I honestly, at this point in my life right now, I don't know which way I'm going to argue for that poll.
Hey, you know what? There's room on the Lakers bandwagon if you want, Jet. Come with a win.
That will never happen. I need to take some time for myself. I need a mental health day, as Kyrie Irving likes to have. Just going to walk about.
Well, your birthday's not till May, so you can't have any days off till May.
Oh, no, it's not about his birthday. It's a family emergency.
Right.
All right. Well, that does it for the NBA trade deadline spectacular. We're going to keep a close eye on the buyout market as LaMarcus Aldridge just got bought out. Looks like he might head to Miami. We're still waiting to hear on some other guys. Andre Drummond, chief among them. Why he would go to the Knicks or the Lakers is beyond me, but we'll see. Why anybody would decide to go to the Celtics is really beyond me. Because I'm hearing, the Celtics could be active in the buyout market. Well,
right.
You'd have to really hypnotize somebody to come to this mess. But that will do it, Sap. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out their website, fullpresscoverage.com, for all the great articles and podcasts they have. Some articles are by John Sapichetti. Some articles will be by me in the near future. If I'm allowed to swear heavily in my articles, then you'll be seeing those. If not, I might have to write them for like hustler.com because they're going to be just filthy laden with swears you've never heard before. We'll
No
talk
pictures.
to you tomorrow. No pictures. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and we'll have the latest on the buyout market and what's going on in the NBA, how it looks after this trade deadline. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. See ya.